What was the title I gave?
Incomplete inquiry.
Incomplete inquiry. So an investigation or an endeavor to understand that is incomplete. We might not feel that it's incomplete, but it is incomplete because the investigation, the inquiry, is conditioned or compromised by the self-centeredness that is described in the Yogacara tradition as the seventh consciousness, or the klesha mind, or the disturbed mind, klisto manavijnana, or the diseased mind. Vasubandhu called it manos, I think, or manos. So what is this saying? It's saying, what am I saying? I'm saying that a part of the consciousness that is in the way of the perception is actually filtering out the direct perception of what this is, what life is, what your thoughts are, the appearance of others, everything. It's filtering that out and making up stuff. Like, oh, you can't do that. Don't go that direction, or that's incorrect, or that's wrong, or you shouldn't do that. That will be harmful. Well, that's not really supportive. Well, how about me? Don't I get some attention here? Why are people disrespecting me? As it says in my first teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, in one of his early books called, what's it called? What's the one after that?
Myth of Freedom.
Thanks. Myth of Freedom. The myth of freedom. In the chapter on the teacher, he says something to the effect of the function of the guru, which just basically is Sanskrit for teacher. The function of the teacher is to insult you. Now, this doesn't mean that the teacher is going to constantly be an ass. If he or she or they did, they probably wouldn't have any students. On the other hand, at times the teaching person or the Sangha, so there's the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, the example of someone who is awake. There is the teachings of everything is dependently arisen. And so if you're practicing and you're endeavoring to follow this teaching, look at this teaching, use this teaching as a support for your understanding, for your awareness, for your inquiry, then the teaching person may be working with you in such a way that they know no one else is going to tell you that you're confused. So perhaps they decide to show you abruptly, and immediately, just out of the space of the relationship, they may insult you. So the function of the teacher is to insult you. In other words, I'm going to help you a little bit with that ego situation you're dealing with. But if you don't have a teacher, if you don't look at this person as the teacher, and you have some ideas about how the teacher should be functioning, in other words, you've not, shall we use this fancy word, surrendered to this situation. I'm not talking about giving up your intelligence. I'm not talking about blind devotion. That doesn't happen in this particular tradition very much. It does some, but not a lot because, well, because as the title of the talk, the Dharma talk is What was it?
Incomplete inquiry.
Incomplete inquiry. Inquiry that is looking, but it's incomplete. And the meditator, the one who is using the powerful training technique, training the mind, using this ancient method, protocol for sit down, hold still, see what moves. And because what is moving is the confusion. What is moving, maybe not right away, maybe at first it could be any combination of stories and situations that are not looked at so much as lessons, or not looked at so much as something that you need to learn, but are looked at as just your mind rattling away and being busy. So it takes a while. As I've said before, I was very lucky to have a couple of teachers who did not hesitate to insult me. Well, they may have hesitated, but not very long. I doubt if they had any thoughts about it at all. Pardon me. So the idea, go ahead.
What does an insult from the teacher do to a student's practice?
Makes them feel bad. If someone insults you, it makes you feel bad.
How does that help students' practice?
If they are able to take it as a teaching, eventually, maybe not right away, but if they're able to continue to return to that, what was that? What was that? Not necessarily why was that, but what was that when this happened, this felt this way? What was that? In the Yogacara tradition, the breakdown is the first 5 sense consciousnesses, the 6th of the thinking process, and the 7th, which is the called the klesha mind. And the klesha mind, or is the confused part of consciousness. It isn't actually it isn't divided up like an egg crate. You know, it may have that kind of appearance when we're working with it because we need to have some kind of division, but it's very abstract in a sense. And of course, I need to mention the 8th consciousness, which is the alaya vijnana, which is Sanskrit for storehouse consciousness. So the confused, or sometimes called the reflexive consciousness, the 7th consciousness, has 4 aspects to it, 4 afflictions. They are self-love, self-pride, self-delusion. What's the other one?
Those were the 3 I was thinking of.
Well, therefore, huh?
Self-love. Did you say
Self-love, pride of self, and then self-delusion,
self-regard?
and then
Regard.
What? Yeah, it's self-reference. Is that what you said? Yes. Self-referral. Everything is referred to me. Everything is referred. We all know someone, maybe it's yourself. Go look in the mirror. That everything is about you. That you can have that kind of a functionality and not appear egotistical at all. Someone who appears egotistical is a particular kind of person, and they may have a lot of pride that may be way under the surface, and they may have a lot of pride that is right out in the open in front of everybody. So the incomplete inquiry is about those 4. It's when we go to sit down, hold still, and with some inspiration and some intention to live a sane, awakened life. We need to look at how insane and unawake we are. We have to look at that part of our mind, and that means you need to actually look at the seventh consciousness. It's very difficult because the seventh consciousness wants to be the gatekeeper of that looking. The seventh consciousness wants to say, oh no, this is not working, don't do this. That's not, no, this is because when the power of shikantaza, zazen, shine and laktung are the Tibetan words for mindfulness, awareness practice. When that starts to actually operate, because we just repeatedly do it, we repeatedly do it over and over again, even though the ego is starting to starve and the ego is starting to clamor, you should find something else. This teaching is not working for you. Meditation should make you happy and uplifted. You need to find another. Maybe you should go study with Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't mean to demean Thich Nhat Hanh. There are people who won't study any other way than through someone like him. So he is there for them. It's a relative situation.
What would a complete inquiry look like, or what is a complete inquiry?
Complete inquiry is you would not see anything separate. You would not see anything separated. You would not see anything that is all one. You would not have an intellectual combination of thought patterns and so on that would describe what you're seeing. Nothing could describe what you would be seeing, understanding. More.
What would the inquiry part of that be?
The inquiry is to sit down and look at it until you see what it is. Over and over. You see what it's not, 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 you see what it's not. It's not this, it's not this, it's not this. The Indians even had a term for this back in ancient times called neti, neti, neti. Not this, not this, not this. Everything you look at, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. We're not exactly doing that, some kind of negation, but we're just sitting down and observing, and then negation will take care of itself. So we don't actually have to go in and actively take the ego by the throat and strangle it. It's unreal. So you don't have to get rid of something that's unreal. If you see that it's unreal, then depending on which combination of causes and conditions is arising as your particular life form, you may be just totally flooded with all kinds of, one set of boxcars full of junk after the other. Thought patterns, thought patterns, thought patterns. And what I'm saying as a Dharma teacher, if you were to come to me and talk about this, I would say, just keep going. Just keep going. What you're describing to me is the path. Someone else could come and say, nothing's happening. I don't feel like anything's happening. I don't feel like I should do anything. Not even sure I should meditate. And if they were in the Hojo, I would say, what do you want? Well, I just thought I'd come and tell you that. And what would I say?
Okay.
Exactly. I would say, okay. Anything else? So you meet people where they're at as a Dharma teacher and as a student of the Buddha Dharma, especially with Sangha, with people in the community. Meet people where they're at. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Doesn't mean you have to disagree with them. And it certainly doesn't mean you have to look away or ignore them. But meet them where they're at. Just be there. Hang out. Listen. Smell, taste, touch. Don't lick people. I didn't say that. But be fundamentally present for someone as they're doing whatever they're doing, saying whatever they're saying. Just be with them. You may have some suggestions, you may not. If you do, they'll probably come out bubbling out spontaneously. You won't be able to stop them. And you may just sit and look. Everyone is so different, you can't have a protocol for how to do that. But if you have investigated here deeply and you begin to uh, crack through that belief in a self, belief and disbelief, that whole structure of believing this and disbelieving that. If you begin to see that is just an incredible charade. There isn't anything separate. There isn't anything separate. Separated? Yes. Separate? No. So therefore, what you're getting yourself into, what you're opening up to, is the incredible totality, to use the positive word, of just totality. And you don't have to step outside to know that it extends endlessly. Most of the world, most of the human beings you meet, probably just about all of them, are very, very wrapped up in their ideas, their opinions, their hopes, their fears, what they like, what they don't like, what they should do, what they shouldn't do. And it quite often extend to you what you should be doing, what you should be thinking, how you should be acting. This is just horse shit. I don't mind saying it that way. Live. You don't have to be here. You don't have to be a Buddhist. You don't have to practice meditation. But be genuine. Be genuine. Be who you are. When I say be who you are, that may be difficult. You may think, I don't know how to do that. Well, then maybe you should stay here for a while. And I don't mean have a clear plan. How do you know that there's such a thing as a plan? How do you know it's a plan?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, right? Or I could say it doesn't work. Right. Wrong. So when we begin to look, when we sit down and train the mind, sit down, hold still, and watch what we see over time, we begin to see how crazy we are, how confused, and how one of the two veils we see right away is conflicting emotions. Having an emotion that is an emotion that wants that, and another emotion that doesn't want that. And it's painful to the apparent self-centeredness to want one thing and then at the same time not want, no, I don't want that. I'm sure people who are involved in intense or trapped by a drug situation, however that may show up, different for everyone, I think. That's part of it. It's even more amplified by the physiological, chemical situation that's happening. So people might look at you, I'll get to you, David, in a minute. People might look at you and think that you're sitting facing a wall, you're turning into a vegetable, or you're going into a trance, or who knows what they're thinking. If they haven't done this, they have no idea. And even if they have done it, practice meditation, what they begin to realize after a while, that every single person in here facing a wall is in a different space. What your karma is, what the things that make up your particular personality. If you say, well, I had this kind of meditation, I had that kind of meditation, not interested. You say, I had a really great meditation. Great, keep sitting. My meditation really sucked. Great, keep sitting. And I don't mean that to be flippant about it. I'm saying everyone's path, if you were to paint a picture of it, you would see everybody's mountainside, everybody's path through the underbrush and over the rocks and down through the swamp and of one's life, one's personality, the causes and conditions that arise as any given lifetime. Look at those things that have happened the events in your life that were really, really difficult. You're still here. We've all had them. We've had some really rotten stuff happen, difficult, painful stuff, and some of it even life-threatening. Here we are in a room that's meant to do what? Train the mind, train our minds. There's no religion being sold here. There's nothing really being promoted. Without your permission. You come in, you sit down, you give me permission to talk for an hour or so. And be a good idea to listen. And then forget it. Forget all of it. Forget everything I said.
Inquiry and observation seem to go together. How do we know when? Is there anything to do with that?
Not much, just repetition. Sit back down, hold still, watch. And it changes. If you do it enough, you'll notice changes in it that have probably been going on for a while, but slipped away because you're busy adding on things about it. You're thinking about what you're thinking. Or you're thinking about what you're seeing or what you're tasting, what you're smelling, what you're remembering. You're thinking, you're adding thoughts onto it. Whatever occurs, don't add. Whatever occurs, don't subtract or judge. Whatever occurs, don't look away or distract yourself. Stay right with it. Just stay with it. You don't have to do it as a mental attitude necessarily. You can do it by just through the body. Just bring the body into a symmetrical situation. Sit down, keep the back straight, hold still. All the senses are open. Watch what arises. And what will arise is phenomena. Yes?
William Murray's daughter,
Moodle?
Melanie Boodles,
Yeah.
said, "Dad, your teacher said horseshit."
William, you have to let me know when Noodles is watching Melanie.
Is she what, 4?
What?
Is she 4 now?
I think she's 4 years old. Yeah. Yeah. I forget sometimes. And you too. I apologize, Melanie. I'll try not to say that anymore for a while.
I was wondering if you could say what self-regard means in the context of the seventh consciousness.
So I think it's just a self-reference kind of thing, that everything is seen in terms of me and myself. So to use the other one, self-love is just totally enamored. We all know someone, probably, maybe it's you. They're totally in love with themselves. And you could have several of these going on, of the 4. One might just be, and a person doesn't have to be necessarily difficult to be around. They can be very nice to be around, but they're just all about how wonderful they are. So, about everything. And then the next self-pride, that's another one that shows up, and it's pretty obvious. But it also can be very subtle, a subtle kind of pride going on. That's the person is maybe aware of it and is aware that when that shows up, other people notice it, and so they don't want people to know that they're prideful. So they, that's fine. Yeah, why not? Compliments are good. Go ahead, compliment me. So the last one, if I may, self-delusion is the next one. Atma moha, is it moha? Something like that. It's a bug. It went through the ceiling. No, it didn't. That's as near as I can tell. Those are Sanskrit words, and I'm trying to think. Is it Atma Dristi? Maybe that's the one. You don't know. But there's one of those Sanskrit words that you could go in and look at the Sanskrit, and then maybe look at how it was translated by Stefan Anaker or Wutai Mountain or whatever, and see that there are different ways that can be translated. Sometimes if you read different translations of something, especially the 30 verses or the 20 verses, they sound like different situations altogether, because there are people pick and choose their words based on their understanding of how that should be revealed. More?
I was just wondering when that that self-regard starts to perpetuate, how we can work with it, or if there's a way of becoming.
Do you see it in yourself?
Yeah.
No. That's how you do it. You use those indexes and you see it, and of course, maybe not of course, but I'm saying it this way. So you don't have to get rid of anything. That's really an astonishing thing to realize. If you realize that, everything starts to open up, because then the ego, insofar as it's still, collecting credentials and territory, realizes that you're not going to get rid of it. But then it asks something. Well, why do I feel like I'm at my funeral every time you walk into the zendo? Because that's probably the case. It's not that has to vanish. It's just that it feels like it's not in charge anymore. It's more like a marionette that sits in the corner. It's still around.
Is there a way to flash onto others?
Well, how?
Is there a way to flash onto others? We're all about ourselves and how this affects me. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to extend it to others.
Okay, so to turn around your attention to benefiting others, or not?
Or just even acknowledging or trying to see beyond just the self-centeredness of the story.
The way that I often talk about, and you recognize this, and would there be a better way of saying it, but it's about the only thing we have are our six sense fields. We actually have more than that, but we need to look at those first so we can understand what they are, so that we can actually begin to move beyond that. And whatever that beyond is, I'm not here to describe that. But I am here to say, don't forget gravity. Don't forget sense of touch, sense of taste, sense of smell, sense of hearing, don't, when you're all tied up in your thought patterns about this shouldn't happen, that should happen, they shouldn't do this, or some kind of discursive thought, whatever it may be, accompanied with maybe feelings about it, or sadness, or whatever may be coming up for you. It's not about getting rid of that. It's about seeing that it's basically unreal, that it actually has no substantial depth to it. It's not real. So therefore, you don't have to get rid of it. You just have to see that it's like you thought you were in your life, when actually you realize it's, as Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. You realize it. My life is, I don't actually have to step into this quarrel that's going on, or to this finger pointing that's going on. I can actually just see it. If you have any ideas or opinions or additions or criticisms about what's happening, you'll be sucked right into it. But if you're able to just stay with what's arising without adding, whatever anyone says, add nothing to it. The way this feels to ego, and ego doesn't like this, is they don't know what was just said, because they're looking for a position. So when someone says, give me something, all leopards are teddy bears. Well, of course they're not, or are they? But if someone says something like that, rather than trying to figure out what they're saying, just hear that, and allow the even maybe nonsense nature of it, or the lack of clarity around it that you're having, not that they're having, that allow that to be there for 3 seconds. Have an experience of not knowing, and it's not Alzheimer's.
How can we see that something is unreal when it feels so overwhelming?
That's how you do it. You see that it's overwhelming, and you see that it's emotion, and it's overwhelming, and then you, because of in your situation, or anybody's situation here, because of the awareness practice, you see that has got tremendous space around it. What emotion that gets a hold of us and kind of drags us into some kind of a slimy pit of emotions and feelings where we feel like we're never going to get out on the other end, has to do with resisting that. And you can resist it through aggression, being mad. You can resist it through remorse, being really, really sad, or really feeling sorry for yourself, or just feeling just terrible. Those are just forms of self-centeredness. It's not saying that you're not going to feel that. Those emotions are not to be gotten rid of, nor is a self to be gotten rid of. But what happens with one who sees there is no solid self anywhere, there's no me and there's no them, that when that happens, then those emotions are self-liberated. So then they may come and they may go, but they don't last. They may come. You could have intense sadness that does not last. You could have intense fear that may come up that just collapses because it's not perpetuated or reified by some kind of a worrywart mentality. That what ego is just constantly fretting about everything. Back, just off stage a little ways. Yes.
We're feeling something and we try to talk ourselves into not pushing, not pulling, not looking away, maybe by saying, I'm just going to feel this.
Yes.
Is that a way of perpetuating it?
No, I don't think so. That may be a way of going the other direction, but we can't really look for success there, because if you start looking for success, you've just left the project. You're back in the room where all the blueprints are, and the road is not being built, or the thing that you need to do to work with it is being abandoned for some kind of evaluation project. So yes, it is say just be here. It's like looking around saying everything is dependently arisen. Say that 100 times a day, and look at something when you say it, or see something, or hear something. You hear a sound that's dependently arisen, that does not have its own self nature. And that's true with every consciousness that's in this room, every six sense fields and their objects, every matrix that we call a human being. Not separate. If it's realized, then the emotions and feelings may still come and go, but when they come, as you've heard me say it different ways, they can't really find a self anymore. So you're still here, you still have nerve endings, you still eat food, and you taste, you hear, you smell, you're still receiving the world coming to you through the sense fields. But the grasping is gone, the demand is gone. So there's a lot more appreciation going on, a lot more even enjoyment of what's coming and going and coming and going. I'm not saying you're enjoying having your teeth drilled. No, that's painful. But it's pain. So we have nerve endings, things hurt. But there's no solid being behind any of that distress.
What is Dharma that insults? You said the teacher insults, Dharma insults.
More.
Uh,
A little louder, David.
Oh, Dharma that insults us, or that we feel like a teacher insults. How does the Dharma, what's that look like when it insults?
Well, it's to self-centeredness, it's quite an insult to hear that you don't exist. That there's no solid separate self in the skandhas: form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness, or memory and consciousness. You can't find a self in there anywhere, and yet that's the conceptual structure. That if we put that on a human being, there's a form, and there's the other four, which is the consciousness area, the perception, concepts or thinking process, and then the six sense fields and their objects. So
we're having a feeling, and we say, and like Junshu was talking about, saying, I'm just going to feel this. Is that setting up an insult?
is it what?
Setting up an insult?
Maybe. How would you see it?
Seems to put some tension to want to,
Yeah.
I guess I might want to look away. So if I
Mhm.
intend to stay there, it's abrasive.
It could be. So it's always about awareness. It's it's always about awareness rather than accomplishing some kind of abstract or conceptual. Just about the awareness, which is an open dimension, which things can come and go. Things. It's like instead of most people are, they might not think so, but most people, because they don't know the contrast. Most people are living in a broom closet. They're living in a little tiny space that is their ideas, their opinions, their hopes, their fears, what they like, what they don't like. Over here's their smartphone, and here's their laptop, probably a PC. There must be something else in here. It's like that's just an image. I mean, it's just a metaphor for closed mind, closed ideas. Not much can get in, except through certain, little holes where people speak through to get to you. And then you could use another metaphor. You could say to someone who is liberated, it would be more like living in an open field. You might not be able to tell yourself the difference between yourself and the cow that's sleeping over there. Just a metaphor, just a way of saying closed up and very open. Fundamentally, and when I say fundamentally, I mean it. Fundamentally, those two things are not different. They're not separate. You should ask questions if you don't understand.
At the beginning, you were talking about the seventh consciousness, and then I think you said the diseased mind filters out and makes up stuff. What is a diseased mind?
Well, diseased means that it's grasping it, it's giving itself a hard time. It's giving everything a hard time based on hope and fear, and based on thinking some things are right and some things are wrong, based on judging, evaluating, condemning, lifting up, pushing down, the three poisons: passion, aggression, and ignorance. Go further.
It just seems like my tendency is to always say, well, you say it's just about awareness, but
Yes.
That doesn't feel like it's enough.
Okay.
Is that the diseased mind that's making a comment on?
Could be.
Just look.
Yeah, it's all that's being really said is, besides the study, we study the concepts that have been passed down through the centuries, because they're concepts that describe what this indescribable situation over and over again, like the 30 verses of Vasubandhu, a very incredible 30-verse description of the nature of reality. So we use that because the ego, self-centered mind, really likes concepts and likes to think. It likes to think up stuff. So we give it something to think about. Since the self-centeredness thinks it's going to get included in realization, because it doesn't realize it's an actor, that it doesn't get included. That being said, it's also not separate from anything, because it's not two. But still, we have to go through that Dharma gate. We have to go through that Dharma gate first, and that has to be a realization before we can see that Buddhas and sentient beings are not two different things. The equality of sameness and difference, Sandokai. Things that are the same are also different. Things that are different are also the same. It's a very simple way of saying something that someone centuries and centuries ago saw the nature of things and brought that understanding back into conceptual form and taught it. It's all over in the sutras. We have some more time if there are more questions.
I had a question about the insults from the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
If when that occurs or we perceive that occurs, can trying to say that it's a teaching be a way to not feel so bad about it, or a way to soften up?
I think it can show up so many different ways. I mean, it really can. Has your teacher ever insulted you? Who's your teacher? I certainly didn't insult you. Only person I can think of I've deliberately insulted in here is Unyo. No, wait a minute. Shoka. I've insulted Shoka. I don't know. I better shut up. Go down the whole list. So the insult may be from the teacher that he, she, they may not be deliberately insulting you. We're not saying that. Just interaction with someone who is present will show up your own. It shows up. Someone who's here. Because that doesn't show up in a typical way, in a way that you could say, well, this is how someone was awake. This is how they would show up. If that's the case, then I'd have to figure out which one of my teachers was actually awake, because they were nothing alike. And I'm nothing like any of them. Nice fingers. Is that an insult? I meant it to be an insult. Didn't quite get you. Further questions? Senchu?
I'm not sure how to ask this exactly, but you mentioned that an insult from a teacher comes out of the space
Yes.
of the situation.
Yes.
So can something intentional come out of space?
Like an intentional insult?
Yeah.
Maybe, but from the point of view of a teacher-student situation, it's probably not particularly intentional. Maybe some of that there, but not much. Usually it's just the dynamic of dealing with someone who is not unclear about what is going on. And that's not necessarily going to show up as light beams coming out of their ears, or, walking on, what are those things that enlightened people walk on? Rainbows? No. Is that where you're going with it? It's like something was deliberately, like, I need to insult her because she's too unenlightened. Which is a good, like, who got whacked upside the head with is that Naropa? Yeah, Talopa hit Naropa with a sandal, wasn't that it? Or, those Tibetan guys there. And then there's a bunch of people hitting each other down. Used to be that, that's the only way you could get your point across, to whack somebody. I think it was 12 years he waited before he finally hit him. You got me picking my fingers now. It's your fault. You're to blame. Yes.
Gyokudo from Minnesota.
It's about time you had a question.
Does how we show up change when we awaken?
I mean, how we show up to others, or to...
Ask her.
Is that what you meant? I would say it this way. Less of an agenda, but that can turn around on a dime and be a really strong agenda about something. But usually from the point of view realization, we don't know what's going to happen because we don't see a big picture, but we don't clamp down on little pictures. So therefore, we're in no man's land, no woman's land, no them's land. Is it them? No they land.
She said yes. That's what she meant.
What did I ask her? So you may show up in different ways. There's no correct. You're not really following any protocol for anything, particularly. Yes.
Is awakening apparent to others?
There's no way others can know. The way they would know possibly is to be inspired by you or by the teachings and to be on the same wavelength or a similar wavelength as a person who was a teacher, and then that might be enough to do it. Some kind of just strong feeling of communication that you could really understand somehow, or you felt had some kind of a connection. Is that what?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't know.
Is that how it was for you with your teachers?
Yeah. With Trungpa Rinpoche, it was very obvious and immediate and scary, because I was very used to being self-centered, and I'm going to do this myself. I don't need any help from anybody. I'm not about to trust anybody. And then he came along. Difficult to explain what it was like. It was just scary. You have 4 minutes. Someone have a 4-minute question? Yes.
Sheldon from Union City has a question. He asks, can an inquiry be complete?
I think if an inquiry is complete, there probably won't be any more. I'm not saying you wouldn't, say, what time are we going to have lunch? I'm not saying you wouldn't have inquiries, but I'm saying fundamentally looking for what this is or what this whole situation is would be over with. That doesn't mean that all kinds of unusual things wouldn't arise. I mean, all kinds of things could arise, but the conflict between self and other would be, all the hot air would have gone out of that balloon. So one would not be operating so much as investigating things, but one would be operating more about receiving things. As I've said many times, I'm saying again, give everything your attention. You don't have to do anything with it necessarily, unless you do. You need to have a volunteer to go pick up Sheldon on all day. Don't see any hands raised. There's a couple. Okay, you're all set, Sheldon. You can come up here and party down. The all day sitting. Rock and roll. Further questions about anything in particular or nothing in particular? Michelle?
Can someone even show up for a half day sitting during the all
Sure.
day sitting?
You can come and sit for an hour and leave. Don't do that. But no, we don't have strong boundaries. I mean, everybody's all over the place with different jobs and schedules and different distances from the temple. No, anytime you can come and sit, please just come right in and, quietly come in and find a spot and sit down. Certainly. It's from 9 to 9. So anytime in there, the Dharma talk is at 4:30 in the afternoon. And so, what else?
Do you have your email? We can send you the schedule.
I don't think you do.
We should put you on the list.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, yes. Anybody else that's out there listening, watching, please come and join us on Saturday. You can meditate all day. Well, I'm not going. I'm going to take a nap, but you guys can meditate. Very good. Thank you so much.
So we'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our red chant books, and once again remind everybody about the donation boxes in the hallway, as well as online with PayPal or debit and credit cards.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-o san chi shi hu, ji-son bu sa mu ku sa, mo ko ja uro mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.